Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, LeBron James returned to Cleveland over the weekend, hit the game-winning shot in a bonkers and incredibly entertaining NBA All-Star game. And from a Lakers fan perspective, that was about the 73rd most important thing that happened with LeBron James over the course of the weekend. We'll talk about all of that and some brewing tension in Lakerland next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter where you get your podcasts, how you get your podcasts, from whom you get your podcasts. We have fresh content for you every day, is up as early as we possibly can. Make another Locked On podcast your second listen of the day. But again, only after making us your first. I want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered with this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So Andy, it seems like over the weekend, in addition to some fantastic three-point shooting from Karl Anthony Towns and a really fun All-Star game like this, the NBA has got this thing dialed in. Like, they figured out a cool way to end it where everybody can feel like
the dunk contest. Got to fix that one.
I don't think it's fixable, but that's a different topic for a different show. But
I just meant because you mentioned the three-point contest before, like the weekend. What works, and
works
what
really well.
And
I just ignore the dunk contest at this point. But the actual All-Star game, the NBA has got that thing figured out better than any other team. The league's All-Star games. I mean, it's very entertaining. Everybody gets what they want out of it, players and fans included. But the thing that we're talking about, and we're going to spend the entire show talking about, is, my God, there was a lot of reporting on brewing tension and brewing problems with the Lakers, specifically with LeBron James and the front office. And it started, kind of like whenever McMenamin released that report that, in point of fact, maybe LeBron and Anthony Davis weren't consulted and completely on board with Rob Pelinka doing nothing at the trade deadline, which we will talk about in great detail because this is really important. But then, Stein has a report, and Dave has another report, and Ramona's reporting, and Eric Pincus at Bleacher Report is reporting, and by the 37th guy who's like, stuff's not good, it's like, this is probably a thing.
Well, there also too was LeBron, as he likes to do, Brian. There was the All-Star game, but then there was the game within the game, Brian, for LeBron, and that was the head games. The game being in Cleveland, LeBron was naturally asked, in particular by Jason Lloyd of The Athletic, but it would have come up from someone, about a potential return to the Cavaliers, the third go-around in Cleveland, and LeBron left the door open. Quote, "The door's not closed on that. I'm not saying I'm coming back and playing. I don't know. I don't know what my future holds. I don't even know when I'm free." I'm pretty sure, Brian, LeBron knows.
I think LeBron knows exactly. LeBron's going to be free whenever he damn well wants to be free. I mean, that's the answer to that.
For F's sake, I know when LeBron's free.
Well, he doesn't
know when he's free.
He doesn't know because he doesn't know what day it is, but he knows it's whenever the heck he wants it to be.
No. I'm saying he knows exactly when he's free,
right,
because his contract ends on X date in 2023.
I'm even saying you don't even have to be that, because he's LeBron James, and he could sign an extension with the Lakers this summer. Let's say he does. He's still going to be free whenever he wants to be, because when LeBron decides he's done being a Laker, he's going to be done being a Laker, in one form or another. He also said real quick, just again to add to the tension, he also praised the hell out of GM Koby Altman for the Cavaliers. Said, quote, "I think Koby and those guys have done an unbelievable job drafting and making trades. I think the big fella, Jared Allen, that acquisition was amazing for them to make. That was actually incredible. They managed to get him. Great trade. And
it really was.
Like, what are they going to do with Jared Allen? They already have
who cares?
Good players.
Obviously,
just get more good players.
Yeah, Darius Garland is a big-time player, and I think the role that Kevin Love is playing right now has kind of uplifted those young guys, seeing a veteran that could sacrifice, a champion that's won a championship, all the things he's done to come off the bench and play this role. I'm not surprised by anything they're doing right now. And then the cherry on top of the double middle fingers Sunday, Brian, at least perceived to Rob Pelinka, was LeBron saying, my last year will be played with my son. Wherever Bronny is at, that's where I'll be. I will do whatever it takes to play with my son for 1 year. It's not about the money at that point. So in other words, LeBron doing a lot of signaling between these comments about the Cavaliers, also praising pretty unprompted the work that Sam Presti has done as far as the eye for talent that he has, basically going out of his way. This was on the heels of praising Rams GM Les Snead, basically praising every exec in the league that is not his own.
Right. And it's what's funny about it to me is like, there's a history of this with LeBron, obviously with the passive aggressiveness and this and that and whatever. But, in isolation, you could look at any one thing. He's in Cleveland. Of course, he's going to say there's a chance. And that could mean in 5 years, I go back and sign a ceremonial, 1 year contract and retire a Cav. Like this could mean anything. And he's been saying,
you want to be polite. You're in Cleveland.
Right. I mean, what are you going to say? The game is literally in Cleveland. It wasn't even like a Cleveland person asked the question. It was like, the game's in Cleveland.
Right.
Okay, fine. Bronny, sure. Like he's kind of made that pretty clear up to this point. He'd love to play with his kid. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be weird. Like when the Kings draft him in the second round and 3 years from now to see LeBron go play in Sacramento, but I believe him when he says he'll go do that to play with his son. I also think he's going to do whatever he can. He's going to be like pulling Phillip Rivers stuff to make sure his kid gets drafted by a city he's willing to play in for a year. You see one report from Dave McMenamin, or you see a report from Ramona. You say, it's just one thing. When these things start to pile up, it is impossible to avoid. Yeah, it means something. And I thought the one of the really interesting ones was Rich Paul himself contacting Stephen A. Smith. He's like, please quote me. After all these things pile up and the tension is here and people are reporting on it and they're talking about it. And the thing that Rich Paul made clear to Stephen A. Smith was that they never said trade Russell Westbrook for John Wall. That they never said that. Now, again, like all these things, there's a lot of wiggle room and we never said that versus like we could have implied it. We made it pretty clear, like whatever. What he didn't have Stephen A. Smith quote them on, though, was refuting the idea that they're pissed at the Lakers front office and they're pissed at Rob Pelinka, because they could have done both of those things, but he only did one. And that to me, and look, if he said both, Stephen A would have quoted him on both, but he only did one. And so when you only refute one half of the story, it sort of leaves people to believe, Andy, the other half is probably true.
Well, and that's
there's some discontent right now between Camp LeBron and Camp Lakers.
Well, and that's also the goal. I mean, LeBron knows exactly what he's doing whenever he says anything. Rare is the moment like we saw where LeBron, after getting back from China, and the Daryl Morey tweet and stuff, where LeBron looked legitimately unprepared for what to say when he was talking about, Daryl Morey's tweet about free Hong Kong and coming back from China.
It happens so rarely, Andy, that it's completely jarring to see it when it does.
It was actually, we were in the scrum with LeBron talking about that. It was actually pretty shocking because for the most part, LeBron is exceptionally good at, if nothing else, choosing his words to reflect what he wants to come out of it. It's occasionally it can backfire on him. And to a certain degree, I think he could be flirting with that with this episode, and we will talk about that. But it is very rare when LeBron does not get the desired effect of his words, and that is happening right now. He wants to be creating the perception of, I am unhappy with the Lakers, And if the Lakers don't get their proverbial bleep together, I could be leaving faster than anybody anticipated. That is the effect that he wants.
There is a lot to the statement that you just said there, Andy, in terms of how the Lakers handle it, what it would mean if the Lakers had to move on from LeBron. I did a radio segment on Monday where I was asked, and I know you talked about it like 3 hours on 710 ESPN in LA, but I was asked, like, could it be that the Lakers just completely blow it up this summer? And it's not a 0% chance for stuff like and all this stuff. And so the implications are really big. But a lot of this, I really do believe, comes down to a colossal, massive, unforced error from Rob Pelinka after the trade deadline. We'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. Football over for the season, but basketball is in full swing for both the pros and college hoops. For all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one.
Stop subtweeting Frank Vogel.
I am not doing that. How dare you?
It's in the copy. I know. I'm just saying.
How dare you? I mean, that would be.
But you will soon be able to bet on.
Oh my God,
Frank
that
Vogel.
is so
Just saying, you'll be
cruel. BetOnline does not want to be associated with that sort of negativity unless they've set the line for it. BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sporting betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right down to Olympics coverage and information. So head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the action and trends. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. So Andy, we love to joke about how LeBron really resists the implication that he's the GM of the team, unless, of course, it's a move that he sort of engineered and put together.
Well, when it worked.
Right. That's what I'm saying. When it works.
Good. Well,
right,
no, he will.
That's true.
Yes,
no,
okay.
you're right. Well, there's
yeah.
What I meant by that was when it works. But so Rob Pelinka raised a lot of eyebrows, mine included, when he said after the trade deadline that Anthony Davis and LeBron James were consulted on there. Everybody was on board on their not doing anything at the deadline. Excuse me. And doing what reporters do, Dave McMenamin at ESPN goes and asks, hey, you guys were cool with this? And the response was very quickly that no, Davis and LeBron, particularly LeBron, were not on board, did not sign off on the Lakers making no moves at the deadline. Really specifically, we're talking about, an opportunity to trade Russell Westbrook to Houston for John Wall.
Which Rich Paul already said they didn't want them to do, even though it was reported by like 50 different outlets.
No, there's a difference. They would have been happy with it. They would have wanted it, and they demanded it. That's what he said was, we didn't demand. And again, that's why there's so much wiggle room with all this stuff.
Well,
there is an immense amount of space between Rob Pelinka saying we consulted everybody, everybody's on board and whatever, and LeBron and AD feeling like, well, wait, what do we mean? We were consulted, we signed off on it. What is it like? The bottom line here is LeBron sees Rob Pelinka using him as a shield to deflect criticism for not making trades at the deadline. And that is not going to fly, particularly if LeBron feels that he wasn't, that Pelinka's lying about it. But really what he, I think, really objects to here is the potential for lying, but also don't CYA yourself with me. Don't throw me under you're the GM of the team. It is your job to take the criticism of trades or inaction and all this. Don't throw me under the bus when people are. There's room for hypocrisy here. I'm not saying, but I'm just, don't. And that is where Pelinka, I think, really stepped in it. And I think it is the source of an incredible amount of this. I feel like so much of what we've seen over the last 10 days, 8 days, whatever the number is, would be drastically different if Pelinka had not said those things to the LA media.
Yeah, I mean, what Pelinka could and should have said was just something to the effect of, obviously, LeBron and Anthony Davis were disappointed that we could not make a move that worked for us, that could improve the team in the same way I was disappointed that we couldn't do that, because that is something we are always looking to do as an organization. Having said that, I am confident that we are going to have a strong finish to the season. I like where this team's head is heading into that stretch. And, I am confident that LeBron and Anthony are, because at the time Anthony Davis was still healthy, it was before he had that injury. I am confident that they're going to finish the season very strong. We're going to give ourselves a fighting chance, and I'm going to be working the buyout market incredibly hard. And
that is a much better. You're
right,
Andy. That is much better than what he actually did.
Yeah. And if they take any exception with anything like that, okay, fine, whatever. Because I do think that LeBron, if nothing else, is upset that they didn't do anything at all at the deadline.
I agree.
But if Rob had said the correct things, then what Rob allows himself is to be in the right when it comes to both what he said and the actual execution at the deadline. Because point of fact, as much as there are mistakes that led up to this point at the deadline and where the organization is right now in the season that they've been having, namely the Russell Westbrook deal, but there are other issues that have gone on there. The truth is, based on everything that I've either been told or read or whatever, with the opportunities at the deadline, the Lakers were right not to make any of those deals, given the limited assets that they have and how much those moves would have really not done much of anything for this season, maybe next season. And knowing that those assets are the only thing you have available, and the Lakers have very few, to try to make this team better for next season for LeBron, they made the right move. And if LeBron's mad about it, fine. Sometimes your stars just have to be mad, but don't add to it by, and this is something Pelinka has a habit of doing, he'd broken away from it for a while, saying too much. Don't speak any more than you have to. Don't present anything more than what needs to be said.
And if you're going to say LeBron and AD signed off and they were on board and they understand all this stuff, and you better be damn well sure that those guys would be willing to say exactly the same thing, and that your definition of signing off and consulting and all these things is the same as theirs, and all of this stuff. You're better off not saying it all. Your job is to eat it as the general manager. That's what you do. But you better be sure that they're gonna be, oh yeah, no, Rob, totally. We talked through it. I really appreciate it. Like, yeah, we'd love to get better. The other thing that's just, and it's kind of neither here nor there, because at this point it seems like they're going to try to get rid of Russ anyway, is just the idea of like, all of this is so obviously Russ related. It's like the notion of like, and you're like, it's like, guys, I'm right here. I'm still right here. And that kind of thing always is interesting to me. But
Brian, really quick, what's funny to me about that is because obviously LeBron has his role in Russ being on this team. I mean, I think Anthony Davis too, but by all accounts, this was something that LeBron really pushed, really wanted to have happen, because it's very obvious that like a lot of the theoretical benefits of having Russ there would directly theoretically help.
They remain theoretical.
Right. But they would directly help LeBron the most. And like, obviously it is Pelinka's job. He is technically speaking, in terms of job title and, the way this is all laid out on, as a theoretical, flow chart, he is LeBron's boss. He is actually higher up in these decision-making processes. And LeBron obviously should have input. He obviously should be consulted. That is the way this stuff should work. But in some respects, it feels like LeBron is actually now taking it out on Pelinka, that Pelinka didn't tell him no when he should have. Like,
Right.
have you ever seen the movie?
But the thing about it is, like, I think it is important to not frame this though as like, like Rob obviously had a trade, lined up. The Buddy Hield deal was ready to go. Kyle Kuzma thought he was going to be a Sacramento King, but that doesn't mean Pelinka didn't think thought this was a terrible idea.
Right, but it's funny. Have you ever seen the movie The Last King of Scotland?
Mm-hmm.
There's a great scene in there. For people who haven't seen it, Forrest Whitaker plays Idi Amin, the Ugandan dictator. And there's this scene where he makes a political move that really backfires badly on him. And he starts yelling at this advisor of his, played by James McAvoy, that he wants McAvoy to start telling him more things to do. And he wants him to start giving him stronger, more emphatic advice. And he's like, you should have told me not to do that. And McAvoy says, I did tell you not to do that. And he says, yes, but you did not persuade me. And I feel like we are right now at the you did not persuade me stage of this thing between LeBron and Rob Pelinka with Russ. Like, look, man, I know I told you to do this, but damn it, it is your job to say no to me, even though your job is also to never say no to me.
Right. Let's talk about this next, because there is so much that's going to bleed obviously into the offseason, into the rest of the regular season. That ranges, and I don't know if we can get to all of it today, but just so people know what's coming. It is related to the competence of Rob Pelinka, the competence of Jeannie Buss as a manager of people, the role that LeBron James plays in all of this, and the role of superstars in forming teams. There is
how long he's going to be here.
How long he's going to be here? Like, what do the Lakers do? Like, do the Lakers try to appease him more over the summer? How do you rebuild this? Because from a practical standpoint, one of the big risks in this trade was, oh, by the way, you're really committed to it for 2 years, not one, because unwinding this thing is going to be incredibly difficult. So much that we can get to and we're not going to be able to do it in 9 minutes, but that is complicated and intriguing, and none of it seems like particularly good news for the Lakers, and we'll do at least some of it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. Okay, it's February, which means you've already just tossed your New Year's resolutions out the window, but don't bail out on the one you made about eating right, because Built Bar will make that easy. Have you tried the Puffs? If you have not tried the Puffs yet, you are missing out on some of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They are not just a protein, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors like cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. Like, they're awesome. All of them are going to be your favorite. It's going to be like trying to choose between your children, which is just impossible unless...
No, it's not.
I know. I was going to say,
I have one that I like better. I can rank them easily.
I know you're ranking.
Totally rank them.
If you've ever spent time around your family, it's not
absolutely
hard to
rank my children. I can rank my children.
But your children just aren't as great as Puffs, which are impossible to rank.
We should actually do a show on that.
All Built Bar.
Do one segment on each kid.
Locked on my children. All Built Bars covered in 100% real chocolate, including those Puffs. And remember this, a typical candy bar, usually 200 to 300 calories. Most Built Bars, just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs.
Right, 4 of them at a time.
But 17, stress eating over those children that you rank, but 17 grams of protein. That's the good stuff. You got great flavors like coconut almond, mint brownie, and for this month, white chocolate cookies and creams. Go to built.com, use the promo code, get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
Wow. I'm like, once you start peeling this thing back, Andy, there are so many different directions that it could go. What do you want to start with? Like, do you want to go to what we do over the summer? Do you want to talk about the front office? And because, like, a lot of you talked about Rob Pelinka's job. Like, certain things about Pelinka's job when you're the GM of the Lakers is actually not that hard. It's like free agents want to come play for the Lakers, right? But like, your job is to manage the stars, manage to the extent that you can, Klutch. There's practical stuff about what you do this summer. Like, how do you figure out, do we keep LeBron? Do we not? Like, do we appease, him? Do we blow it up? Do we run it back? What do we do? Where would you like to start, Andy? I'll let you make that choice.
Firstly, just the idea of LeBron actually wanting to leave, acknowledging earlier all the signs that he clearly is putting out there. For what it is worth, I did ESPN radio earlier on Monday with Ramona Shelburne, who is obviously from ESPN very dialed into a lot of this. And she went out on record saying LeBron does not want to leave the Lakers before his contract is done. He is actually not trying to push his way out. We'll see where all of this goes. Again, a lot of this can be in degrees, but from what she had been told from sources, he is not actively, for the time being, looking to leave. A question, though, with all of this, and, to answer really quickly one of your questions as far as what you do this summer, I think you try, as long as LeBron is on this roster, you try to make any move that would be good for the organization to be more competitive for next year, the 2023, for the time being, his last under contract, because that's what you should be doing anyway. And again, that's why I think it was important to maintain your assets, because I think you have a better shot of doing that this offseason versus at the deadline.
Right. The ability, and it's the ability to add one more pick for people who move it on it. Instead of just being able to trade the 2027 first round pick, the Lakers could also trade 2029.
Russ becomes an expiring, there are just more options.
Little things, sure.
An interesting, though, question that I've brought up a couple times on Twitter at Cam Brothers that I haven't really seen people talk about before is, let's just skip ahead to what is being perceived as the worst case scenario, which is LeBron wants to leave earlier than people expected, whether before this coming season or after his contract ends, as opposed to theoretically extending 1 or 2 more years with the Lakers and staying with the Lakers as long, basically, as he can play, and wants to instead leave earlier than that. Is that necessarily the worst thing in the world for the Lakers? Like the idea of, okay, LeBron after next season will be 38 years old. He is still playing at a high level. There's no question. But he is becoming increasingly less available, like in terms of it being a given. The injuries with the Lakers, unfortunately, have been pretty prevalent. Other than the season where they won the championship, LeBron's availability has not been anywhere close to just assumable.
Correct.
Whenever you have LeBron on this team, you are going to be in extreme win now mode. And we've seen the asset depletion that comes with that. And I'm not criticizing the Lakers for doing it. I criticize some of the decisions that they made in doing it, but that is the cost of doing business.
Right. And by the way, they won a title.
Right.
They have already won a title. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Which in some respects speaks to is it the worst thing in the world? Because your goal was to win at least one title. And while one would be underwhelming in terms of what you maybe expected from this, one title is nothing to sneeze at either. One title is success. How much longer do you actually want to operate under these constrictions if you are the Lakers, given where LeBron is in his career and everything that comes with it? I'm not saying that it's ideal necessarily to end this thing early, but if you had to choose between ending it earlier than you had planned versus a little bit later than would be ideal, you take earlier 100 times out of 100.
There's no question. The problem with all of this is, and because we talked last week on a show, got a ton of feedback on the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel. About the notion of Anthony Davis as a future franchise cornerstone. And I think people look at that and they go, a little more nervous about that idea than I was, certainly following the bubble. And, it's, would you trade AD this summer? Stephen A. Smith floated that idea.
Sure.
And, it's not a ridiculous idea. The problem is, what do you get? Because if you're trying to do something quickly because the Lakers are always kind of in win now mode. Very rarely are they not in some form of win now mode.
For better or for worse.
Right.
A little bit of both. They refuse to rebuild.
only when we are responsible for the post-game show do they decide that they just don't give a bleep about winning. And then everybody's mad because we're not positive
actually,
enough.
Brian, they did give a bleep about winning. They just went about doing it terribly. They actually
and
sadly
then
were
everybody's
trying.
like, oh, you're not positive enough. You're not like, shining this thing. And then
that's a different
I'm
show.
just saying. Anyway, like what it's people would be reluctant to give up their young stars or whatever, an established player, something, kind of like the Simmons for Harden thing or whatever, for Anthony Davis, for all the same reasons that the Lakers want to move him in the first place. Like the idea of what can you get if you trade LeBron James is kind of a fascinating intellectual exercise, because the answer is not easy to come by. Because on the one hand, he is LeBron James. He is still averaging, he's 29. He's averaging 29 points a game this year. When he's available, he is balling.
No question.
And, he's not necessarily less available than most stars. He's just not always available like LeBron always was.
Right, but he is less available. I will say this. He is less available, though, specifically for him, because he is one of the most heliocentric players in the league.
I'm not saying he's all I'm saying is it's not like he's missed 60 games a year.
Sure, all I'm saying
put all
is
that stuff together, and
of course. The only reason I bring that up, Ryan, is just because LeBron being absent, I think, is very specific and different than most stars being absent. That's all I mean. Sure. It's a different deal,
because you're kind of building your team around him and all that stuff, and like it's such a radical change when he's not there. And then the Lakers are kind of all in. Like, if you try to blow it all up, like, okay, you're going to have to give in a little bit extra to get out of the Westbrook thing. So that's some of your stuff. Now, are you trading AD to try to stay good now, or are you going to try to just sort of replenish what you lost they are so neck deep in win now mode that unwinding that becomes really difficult. What is clear, and we can quit here because we got weeks and summers worth of content coming out of this. They got to fix it.
Sure.
Because the most damaging thing that comes out of this, I think, is another reinforcement of among players, particularly, and certainly agents, that Rob Pelinka is not to be trusted. That Rob Pelinka will make things up to protect himself, to make the organization look good, mostly to make himself look good.
At least he didn't say me, LeBron, AD, and Heath Ledger were all in agreement.
Right. We're all
on board with the inaction at the deadline.
The player stuff, though, is really important. And if they think he's two-faced, if Rob's trustworthiness with players is questioned, it's bad. So they need to fix that. We got some fun things coming up this week. I'm not totally sure of the schedule. We got a great interview about young Koby and breaking into the league and his time at high school with Mike Sealski, the writer at the Philadelphia Inquirer. We're going to have that interview, which we did, coming. We also have a roundtable thing with a bunch of other Locked On hosts that we'll be putting out this week. So a lot of fun stuff before the games start. And yeah, that's all. We'll see everybody on Wednesday, right? Wednesday?
Yes.
Wednesday.